Welcome back to the Michigan Insider here on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket. We are online at WTK.com. We were also live now on Ticket TV for the MGoBlog Roundtable. Seth Fisher, Brian Cook, Craig Ross. Good morning, fellas. How are you?
Morning.
Good.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it. Michigan wins the Big Ten championship. As Bakes and I were talking in the last segment, this is about as good a two-year run as most of us have ever experienced in our lifetime. So let's talk about the Big Ten championship game before we move on to the playoff and beyond. So Seth, we'll start with you. What'd you your big takeaways as Michigan the way it looked to me, kind of like the way Michigan's laid the blueprint out all season, kind of a close first half and then put the pedal to the metal in the second half and exert your will over a team. And Michigan goes on to the victory over Purdue.
I thought it was interesting that Purdue seemed very prepared for Michigan, almost like they identified who was going to be their opponent if they got into the Big Ten championship and practiced specifically for that team, because they had some really cool ideas to like go against Michigan's power running game, especially with like shifting their line over late and like figuring out when Michigan's snap is. Because what happens, you shift your line like that real quick, and then the offensive line will be like, oh, that guy's there, and then they just shift with how they're going to block, and then they
but that didn't really work, because you go and you look at those plays, and what happens is that when Michigan has a free hitter in the box, that guy's able to apply himself, but the blocks all get made. So when Purdue's +1 in the box, because McCarthy keeps, I think, once in this game, the common thread from, I think, the last 3 weeks is what you see in the ground game is that sometimes when the opposition's +1 in the box, they're able to hold the ground game down, but you don't see guys in the backfield very much. You don't see blocks being defeated very much. What you see is Michigan running the plays that they're running all the time, and then it's just a matter of, is this like tactically correct? Did Michigan put someone in the wrong spot, or did a running back make someone miss, or did they occupy someone with JJ McCarthy? And so on both of Donovan Edwards' long runs, he makes someone miss the line of scrimmage. And the first one is like, okay, that's a cornerback and he's in a lot of space. So that's a win, I think, for Michigan. And then the second one is more of a blocking thing, because Purdue has a scrape exchange on. And so someone's shooting inside of the kickout block and he just has too much space to shut down. So Zinter and Barnhart just clear out the entire side, and this guy's coming down, and he's like, oh, I got to plug this gap, and then all of a sudden Donovan Edwards is running outside of him. So I'm a little frustrated by sort of the ground game not doing what it did against Iowa. Like, just in terms of I got used to this. Like, this is what I liked. But you can see the compensations in the big plays that Michigan's hitting now. Because when you get more aggressive and then you get wrong, it's a big deal. And so we're seeing less bend and don't break from opposing teams, because Michigan has proven that just doesn't really work.
Correct. Well, so what they were doing, I think, is when they were doing those shifts, they were kind of filling in the guy they're filling in the spot they would leave with an extra hitter. And what Michigan, I think, started doing was identifying where that extra hitter was. And you talk about, like, he gets delivered to a cornerback, and it's like, okay, well, that's a win. Even if that cornerback in Michigan's offense against Penn State or Ohio State, that guy is nowhere near the play because he's freaking out about JJ McCarthy.
Right, and so we just have the one McCarthy run, and they're in a conference championship game and they got a month, but I think they just feel so beat up, right? Like, they've got multiple guys out of the lineup, and Edwards is dinged up and Quorum's out, and I think that they just looked at this game and they're like, we don't need to risk JJ, and so they don't, and then they're able to get Donovan Edwards 180 yards anyway. And then I think the other story from this game is that McCarthy is making the kind of throws that you need him to make to beat Georgia. Like, he has those 2 drops in the bucket right over linebackers in zone. He has, you go to the box score and he's got 17 attempts in this game, and you're like, I can't believe that, because it just felt like he was dominating this game. Like, he has the back shoulder to Colston Loveland, which is a throw that we just don't see Michigan even attempt. Like, we've been complaining about the fact that they don't really even bother with, contested catches. And maybe that's because they didn't feel they had a guy like Colston Loveland who was going to make that a plus EV move. So, he didn't do a whole lot in this game, but the things that he did displayed that NFL upside, displayed the kind of stuff that when you go up against Keely Ringo and the rest of Georgia's defense, the plays you're going to have to make against that team.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you in slightly different. I mean, I think you're perhaps both saying the same thing, albeit in slightly different ways.
There's not a disagreement,
right? And that I was surprised that Purdue seemed so well prepared for Michigan when it was difficult to believe they would actually think they were going to be in this game in the first place, but yet they did seem prepared. And I think the shifting you saw from the defensive tackles and then bringing guys down from various places did cause Michigan some difficulty. But Brian's of course right, is that it also led to very big plays, a lot like what's happened in other games when teams gambled at the line of scrimmage this year. So both are true. I'd like to speak generally, though, to Purdue playing really well, I thought, on offense. And O'Connell, I thought, had a terrific game. I thought their wide receiver, what were they calling him? Charlie Sizzle or Chuck Sizzle?
Chuck Sizzle.
Chuck Sizzle was really good. And their running back was pretty good, too. All those guys were walk-ons. And they really were good. And I thought O'Connell threw the ball probably better than anyone has thrown it against us all year long. And, we had some trouble. We had trouble tackling early, although that seemed to rectify as the game went along. And I thought in our zone, when we played zone, we seemed to have people in the same spot now and again. And so there were gaps in the zone. I felt like as we played a little more man as the game went along, it got somewhat better. But I think Purdue deserves a lot of credit. Brom had some very interesting stuff in the game, particularly the fake flea flicker. And I must have asked 20 people this week, have you ever seen that? No, nobody that I talked to it. I think Borges might have said to Sam that he had never seen that play.
They ran it before, didn't they?
They ran it in
really?
2017, yeah.
Okay, I didn't remember it. Okay, so
I mean, it's 5 years ago, and I don't think anybody remembers one Purdue trick play from Pfizer 5 years ago.
Okay.
One person on the internet found it. So,
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. But it was a cool play, you have to admit. I think it was something and I suspect that you're going to see more teams do it in the bowl games that people like to imitate. But I was impressed with Purdue. I was impressed with what Brom did, and now he's at Louisville. And has Purdue hired a coach yet, or is that just?
No, it's just getting underway.
Yeah,
I mean, it happened to them yesterday, right?
Yeah. So
is that a landing spot for Jim Leonard? Maybe.
I was wondering, maybe
on the list. There are a lot of names on this list, but Jim Leonard's name is definitely one that's come up.
Yeah.
How funny would it be if Wisconsin just ends up getting beat every single year by their former coaches?
I would kind of like that, but or at least
when Leonard's doing. I think Fickle's going to have some success there, but he's bringing in a spread. He's bringing in the guy from North Carolina who's a spread dude.
Well, that's obviously what direction they're going. I mean, Fickle has been a defensive guy, I think, primarily, and so I think he's going to have his fingers on the defense there. But that he's turning over a different Wisconsin. My guess is the fans will like it at Wisconsin, at least going into the season, they'll like it.
All right, that's the Big Ten West. We can get back to that a little bit later on, but Michigan wins the Big Ten championship game. They're 13-0 for the first time ever in program history, which in itself is quite fun to say, but 2 more games hopefully left to play. The playoff has been announced. I assume we're all locked up at this point in time, that everybody agrees that, I mean, they had Ohio State backdoored in, but that the playoff committee still got the playoff format, the 4 teams in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone agrees. I mean, I didn't hear anyone who said that Ohio State shouldn't be the 4th seed. I do.
I mean,
really? Go ahead.
Yeah, they should have put anybody else in. You can't get
Not Alabama. Anybody else but Alabama.
You can't get trucked by 22 in your final game and make the college football playoff. It should have been Utah. They got a conference championship. And you know what happened? When they, played USC, they beat them twice. So that's 2 more victories over USC than Ohio State has. They should have been in the – I mean, come on. They got quarterbacks got cool hair. They should be in the playoff.
I've long advocated for the postseason in college football to have lots of different options. And everyone yells at me whenever I bring this up, but like the BCS era was not great, but sometimes you did have an FSU and a Virginia Tech who were undefeated. And like that's all you want is those 2 teams to play each other, right? Like this year is a perfect year for the BCS. You got 2 undefeated teams. They should just play each other. So this is what I've been advocating for forever. Just have a system that have different systems. Sometimes you have a 6-team playoff. Sometimes you could even have a 12-team playoff. I know that they're going to do that anyway, but like there are ways to just take the year you have and say, okay, we have these different systems. This is the way to do it. There's a different system when there's 3 teams that are worthy of it. There's a different system when there's 4 teams that are worthy of it. This year, it's just you've got 2 teams worthy of being there. TCU might have been a third, but they lost their championship game. I think the best thing they could have done is probably just have everyone play their bowl games and then have Michigan and Georgia play afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely unrealistic, though, right?
Well, I'm not sure it's unrealistic.
Yes, it is completely unrealistic.
It sounds like it's the best idea I've heard.
Just
because we got to take all the systems we've had. We've had the bowl system. We've had the bowl system plus one.
Okay. Let's look at it from a money perspective. Does that make more money? No, it's unrealistic.
No, so it's unrealistic.
It's not happening.
That's the problem.
But the point stands. And I made this point for years, which is when you get to the end of conference championship week, you know exactly how many teams are really playing for a national championship, and the number is never more than like 3 or 4. Usually it's 2. Like this year, it's 2. There usually aren't more than 3 or 4. So when was the last time we had more than 4 teams at the end of the year that we were actually having that conversation? Go, oh, that 5th ranked team should be in the conversation. It's very rare.
No, I mean there was that year where like TCU got left out for Ohio State, and I was like very controversial. And I think Baylor was also up there. So there were a couple years where it's 6. And when you expand to 12 teams, then all of a sudden these distinctions matter more. And so right now it feels like, okay, what's Michigan's reward for being clearly one of the top 2 teams? Not really anything, because you're going to a bowl game in Phoenix instead of, having either a home game in the first round or a bye. Now, if Michigan's reward for being the number 2 team in the country in a 12-team playoff is they get a bye and then hopefully down the road a home game in the quarterfinal, then that actually feels like a significant win in a way that the current system is real flat. It's like top 4 is basically all the same, and then 5 gets nothing. And so that's why I've always supported actually a 6-team playoff with home games, but I'll take 12.
Kevin Warren did say yesterday at the SBJ whatever conference down in Vegas that he's now he's warmed up to the idea of the quarterfinals being on campuses, which the commissioner of the Big Ten should never have been against quarterfinals being on campuses, because 5 through 8 will get the home games, but 1 through 4 should get that home reward too in the quarterfinals, get that advantage that you're talking about, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the only reason that you would argue against that is if you're a soft batch football program like Ohio State and you're worried about weather in January. Well, gotta. I mean, that's insane to me that you would not want to play Alabama in the shoe. I mean, they've been talking about having a playoff game in a dome somewhere. So, I mean, that's the state of their program right now, where it's like they're scared to play outdoors when it's cold. I got some bad news about meteorology. But yeah, it is completely insane. And honestly, I would like the semis to be on campus too. And then the final should just be at the Rose Bowl.
I mean, I agree. The semi should be on campus this year. And, and Georgia kind of has that, or at least they've got a quasi home game. Michigan's travel situation isn't ideal. They go out to Glendale, and then whatever it is, 9 or 10 days later, they play in LA. if that's how it works out. It feels less
How do you
than
go to
ideal.
LA and not play in the Rose Bowl?
And then
This is
That's
what
the other thing.
this is the
That's
thing.
the
They
other-
killed the bowls already. And
Mhm.
when Brian says oh, your system's not going to make money, or we got to go to a 12-team playoff. One of the reasons we have to go to the 12-team playoff right now is because no one wants to go to the Rose Bowl. Brian just said number 5 gets nothing. Number 5 gets to go to the Rose Bowl, and no one wants to go to that anymore. They killed the bowl games by having the playoff system. Said, okay, this matters, and then everyone people even want to play in the Peach Bowl, right? If you don't make the playoffs, it's over. And it killed a system that was actually really good. And now they're playing it in an NFL stadium
I mean,
in the
I
same
don't
city,
I don't
in
really
the same
know if
metro area.
the old bowl system, the Rose Bowl is cool, but do I prefer a 12-team playoff to the old bowl system? Yes, I do. Gives much more meaning to the games. And I mean, honestly, what I have liked to see is that I would like to see the bowl season stay as is and then have a 12-team playoff after that.
Sure.
Because then those bowl games have a lot of meaning, but
I think what we need to acknowledge is that for a very long period of time, it was told to us how important these bowl games were, and they've always been exhibitions. Yeah, going to the Rose Bowl is cool to reward for the team and the fans, but it's always been exhibitions. The playoff has just put that out into the spotlight, but they've always been exhibitions. And except for 1, 2, or 3 games, right? For the top 1, 2, or 3 teams that are playing for a national championship, everybody else is playing an exhibition game.
Well, but
Half the teams got to end the year on a win.
Right.
The kids got to go
next year.
go on a trip to a warm place, and then half the teams get to end the season with a win. Whereas the playoff, everyone but the champion ends on a loss.
what?
That happens in every sport.
It's great for basketball, but you don't have that many games in college football. Yes, if you could add a playoff to the.
You sound older than Craig right now.
Well, I was going to even be older than Seth, and that is I don't even really care about this playoff system at all. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they could go back to the bowl system and have mythical national champions. Because to me, mythical national champions are no better or worse than the current system. And B, it gives people stuff to argue about. I mean, was 1997, what remains indelible to me is that Nebraska somehow still thinks they were national champions. I love the fact that they can retain that delusion. And so so what? I mean,
the problem was at the end of
winning
the
is-
season, you'd have 2 undefeated teams. You have undefeated teams in 94. You have 2 undefeated teams in 97. You have these 2 undefeated teams that they want to play. They had a bowl system. All the other bowls were part of it, and the Rose Bowl was like, no, we got a good thing going. And all they needed to do was figure out a system to say, look, when we have a system, we have a situation like this. I'm sorry, Washington State. You got to step aside. Nebraska's coming to the Rose Bowl. That's all they had to figure out, and they couldn't figure out that system.
That's literally what the BCS was.
That's what the BCS was supposed to be.
They added the Rose Bowl.
But no, BCS we're always going to have a 2-team playoff. The BCS was always a 2-team playoff. It wasn't when we have a situation like this, that's what we do. It was we are stuck with a 2-team playoff. That's all it was.
All right, I gotta log off. You guys are too old to talk to.
Hey, you know what else? They should eliminate offsides in soccer.
Craig Ross is so old.
Thank you, Randy and Jason. All right, we will shift gears away from the playoff as a lot of other things are going on in the world of college football. So let's jump into the portal conversation. Michigan has lost a couple guys to the portal, and they've already brought one guy in from the portal. Let's start with the guys, Brian, that are leaving, that maybe didn't leave so quietly in Eric All and Cade McNamara, 2 captains that are leaving via the portal. Cade to Iowa, and Eric All is actually visiting Iowa today.
Well, I mean, if you're Cade McNamara, I don't know why you would burn all that goodwill. You had an opportunity to go to Iowa, be Jake Rudock over there, and then Michigan. You have a lot of happy people who really appreciate what you were doing for this university, and then you kind of go on this pity party on a podcast, which I'm not going to listen to all of, but I've seen highlights, and it's just like, dude, what are you doing? I just don't understand. But I mean, All's a big loss. Like he's an excellent tight end, and Michigan uses lots of tight ends, and so that's a big hit to depth, especially with Schoonmaker headed to the NFL. I don't really know if there's anything that Michigan could have done about that, because if you're so determined to get back surgery that you're on some sketchy strip mall like back thing in Florida's website as a testimonial, then I mean clearly you're at odds with the Michigan medical department, and like I mean at that point you've really broken the trust of the program, and then you can't be upset when they are like, what I mean what are we supposed to do here? We gave you medical advice and you didn't accept it, and then you went and got surgery from Dr. Nick. Like, like I guess things happen, and but anyone talking about the culture of the program, I mean, programs with bad cultures don't have this happen. You know, they don't have back-to-back Big Ten titles, right? And Michigan lost very few people in the portal last year. They're not going to lose that many this year. They've already brought in a excellent offensive tackle, probably, I imagine, if they keep the guards. And they're looking for a couple more guys. So it feels like, yeah, I little disappointed in the way that these captains left the university, but good luck to them. They will.
I should mention Lewis Hansen also in the portal, so Michigan's lost 3 in the portal.
Yeah, but Lewis Hansen is like a very typical.
Passed by Max Bredesen.
I just wanted to get my number to be accurate. That's all.
Yeah, that's like you're like 5th string, and one of the guys in front of you is younger than you. That's a very typical departure.
One's a walk-on from your class.
Yeah.
The Cade thing is mystifying. You would think that Cade is a smart guy, and if I had been him, I would say I would go talk to Dave Abloff and figure out how I should do this. And it isn't complicated. What he should have said was, had a great year last year as quarterback for Michigan. The handwriting was on the wall for me that JJ had, was going to be the quarterback here, and I want to play. I love the university. I love the opportunities I had, but I really want to play, and I want to play at a place that sort of fits my skills. How hard would that be?
It's harder than you think. No. I totally disagree with this, because these guys are trying to get to the NFL. These guys are trying to have the story be about how they're great players. You don't want to say I wasn't able to play. If in Eric All's case, I don't know what's going on, but to me it sounds like there was a chance that he wasn't going to be able to be himself anyway. Like we're talking about losing Eric All because we're expecting this guy to step back in again and be a great starter again. If he's getting this back surgery from Florida, maybe the alternative was you're going to have back problems and you're not going to be the same player you were. But they can't say that. And the program's not going to go say that about these guys either. Peyton McNamara is not going to accept, I got beat out by J.J. McCarthy and after I won a Big Ten title, and I'm just a game manager who has to go to game manager you. He's going to say, literally, I'm going to go prove I'm not a game manager, because he's a player. He wants to go play in the NFL.
He can say that and still be gracious on the way out the door. Other people have managed to do that somehow.
But I'm not going to knock a kid for how well his press conference went. That is so low on the things that I care about. Everyone knows what happened. J.J. McCarthy happened. End of story.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he seemed pretty unrealistic about what happened there. He's like, well, I never really had a chance to win the job. It's like, dude, did you watch you played in them? Did you watch those games? Like, nobody in their right mind would have kept you as the starter after that. Nobody. And
that's correct.
And like I mean, I guess these guys got to believe in themselves, but you also got to have like a reality check there, right? Like Michigan goes 13-0. They beat Ohio State. J.J. McCarthy goes absolutely ham in that game. And even after all that, you're not like, well, tip of the cap. He didn't even name him. He refused to say J.J. McCarthy's name. Like, what is that? That is like some 3rd grade stuff.
Exactly so. Exactly my opinion. It was 3rd grade stuff. And it was churlish, inelegant, and just plain stupid. And that's just what it is. And I feel badly for him, and I feel badly about it. But it's what it is. In terms of Eric All, Michigan's very limited on what they can say because of HIPAA, and obviously what happened is they felt like a certain course of treatment was justified, and their medicine staff did not think a surgery at a strip mall in Florida was justified. I assume, my guess is that Michigan didn't pay for that.
Now, Eric also said on social media that Michigan did pay for it.
Oh, they did?
I think it was last night, but it was a post on a conversation he had with, I think it was on Instagram or something, but he said that Michigan did pay for it.
Good for Michigan then, even though it's pretty clear that seemingly that Michigan was not in favor of this particular surgery. So I wish him well. I hope both those guys do well, actually. But I felt that it was clumsy on their parts and self-destructive.
All right, guys, I want to get back. Oh, go ahead, Craig. Seth, before we wrap up this.
I mean, all it changes is whether I'm going to be like rooting for Iowa next year because those guys are there. Okay, like you're inelegant on the way out. Fine. I'm not going to go, keep following your career and being super excited. They're Michigan alumni. They won the Big Ten for us last year. Like they have lots of room to be jerks on the way out before I can really care about it. I know that we're talking about it this week because the scenario and like, okay, we don't want Michigan being trashed or whatever, but like, I can't get myself to care. They're great players for us, and I wish them well.
I agree with that. I just felt like they could have done a lot better.
All right, guys, we're going to step aside, take a break on the radio here. We'll obviously still be on Ticket TV, but we're going to get into a little bit more on the Big Ten West coaches. Also, a little Michigan hoops and hockey on this side of the break, as Michigan hockey is killing it on the recruiting trail. So we'll get to that next year on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, the Ticket. Oh, clear. And I guess the TCU matchup as well, but we can obviously get into that more the next couple of weeks as well as time to talk about that.
I like, incidentally, you're talking about the tight end depth chart. Aside from the kid at Cal Poly, who I think they have a good chance at, Cuevas, I think his name is. They've got this Deacon Tonelli kid coming in who the little bit I looked at him, it looks pretty good. I mean, he's a looks similar to Loveland, and also they've got, I don't know what the story is with his name, the kid from Germany.
Marlon Klein. He's
I
probably 2 years away. He's probably like a 2-year project. Okay. Yeah, he's kind of a Zach Gentry. So they're gonna work on him for a little bit, get him bulked up, and then he'll be like a fast guy who's super big. It's funny that Michigan fans are like freaking out because like, oh no, look at how many tight ends we're losing, and we have Colston Loveland going into his true sophomore year. You have Max Bredesen going into his redshirt sophomore year. And this program, they never miss on tight ends. So
Hibner was at least a high recruit, and they'll bring another tight end aside from Tonelli. They'll probably bring another tight end.
Yeah, and like, how do you replace Joel Honigford? Well, you've got all these extra tackles. Slap a number 90 on one of them. They can do the same thing Honigford did.
Yeah, they can use that 7 offensive lineman 2 tight end formation again. When he needed 2 tight ends.
That's basically what he was. You notice they didn't do the 6-0L very much this year, except for against Purdue. They had Al Hadi lining up as a fullback, which that was cool. But they didn't do a whole lot of extra offensive linemen this year because they had Joel Honigford. That's basically what his job was. How many times did they pass to him in the last 2 years? Once?
Yeah, I remember one, maybe twice. What did you think of the 2-point play when they have the center is an eligible? I think he's eligible.
That's the subject of the Seth and Matt show this week because everyone else is taking all the good. Because Devin Gardner's like, I'm going to show you everything JJ McCarthy throws in this game. I'm like, well, that didn't leave me a lot on offense, but so. Michigan's playing with the systems of like what's legal, right? So you're allowed to snap it from anybody on the on the line, including the guy who's eligible. So they snap it with a tight end, and Purdue's like, aha, we got it, we know. So they cover the tight end, and they forget to cover the other tight end who's in the backfield. So they double the one guy that the trick play is supposed to get open, and they just leave the tight end behind him open. So it's like, okay, flip 2 points.
Yeah, that's an old single wing thing. I know back in the single wing days, they would snap the ball from anywhere. In fact, before there were hash marks, you had to snap if the ball went out of bounds. You had to snap the ball from a foot from the boundary, from the out of bounds mark, and so they always would have an end.
You're just trying to
the ball.
reclaim the oldest man on the podcast after
After
Brian tried
Brian
to give me the award. You're like, I remember when they used to snap it from the town next door, and then all the other English towns would be fighting over the same ball.
Yeah, but yeah, in any event, that's an old single wing thing. I thought it was great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was kind of like let's empty the playbook time of the year,
Yeah.
right? You're probably not using that in the playoffs.
Well, I wonder if it's something that, since it wasn't obvious that going for two there was, maybe it is to you guys, but to me it wasn't obvious that was the right choice. But it made me wonder if he was just trying to A, use something they practiced on, or B, put something on tape, and they've got some variation on the theme on the theme going forward.
I just want to credit Purdue fans for not like going all Sparty after that, because like if they ran that play to go up 17 on Michigan State with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, that fan base would have just been like screaming, and probably Ohio State too, screaming, "What are you doing? The game's already over. Why are you going for two? You have no." And like Purdue fans are like, no,
that's not
a game.
I don't think that's accurate. Like you're up 2 scores with 7 minutes left. That's a material impact on the game. It's not running the score up.
Yeah, making it a 3-score game. Great strategy.
I did not say that they were justified in that reaction. I'm saying
I know,
they would have that reaction.
I don't think that would have been the case.
I don't know. In Ohio State's circumstance, I don't think they would have any standing to make such a claim, since I've seen them do similar things, and so I don't know if Ohio State fans would have said a peep about it. Interestingly enough, on the Ohio State fans, their coaches won 90% of his games, and there are people out there calling for him to be fired. I mean, he's
not anymore. They immediately turned the second they got in the playoffs. They're like, Michigan was lucky. We're gonna go kill them. They don't want this smoke.
Yeah, that's right. But post game, at least, there was a lot of angst about a 90% winning coach. It seemed a little over the top. So he's lost 5 games since he's been there.
What's the only thing that matters to Ohio State? Beating Michigan. What was his one mission this year after getting hammered last year? Is to go beat Michigan. What happens instead? He loses by 6 more points at home.
All right.
And going through that game, I just finally finished the UFR this week of that game, and there were a lot of times when Michigan could have gotten more turnovers. There were a lot of times when Michigan could have on the other side of the ball, broken them early. So, I mean, they could have. Losing by 3 scores and change was actually on the less likely end, the more Ohio State end. They could have lost by 4 or 5 scores in that game.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of frustration by their fan base, but it seemed like going after a coach who'd won 90% of his games was it felt a little misplaced.
You knew as soon as they lost that game, you knew exactly what they were going to do.
Yeah, probably.
And if they get smoked by Georgia, or if they beat Georgia and lose to Michigan in a championship game, the conversation will return. This is a respite for their conversation. It's not gone. It's a 4-week respite spared by Utah beating USC, basically.
Yeah. Do you see Ohio State having any play against Georgia? I mean,
didn't they get manhandled by Michigan? Isn't Georgia like Michigan, but maybe better?
Georgia beat up on us last year. There was no question.
I can't imagine that, but I can't imagine they have a chance.
I mean, you go to the playoffs and you have a quarterback and a receiver, you can win a game. That's been true for years. Like Georgia, that's the one thing they've got a great cornerback. But
all right, guys, we're coming back on radio. Stand by.
Yeah.
And we are back here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTK, the ticket, online at WTK.com. Myself, Ira Watcher, filling in for Sam. He is out of town. He's got a family thing going on today, and then the entire show is going to be off tomorrow. So this is our Thursday, Friday edition of the Michigan Insider here on Sports Talk 1050, WTK, the ticket. I'm joined by Seth, Brian, and Craig from the MGoBlog Roundtable. And we've talked a ton about Michigan and obviously getting to the playoff. We'll preview the playoff over the next couple of weeks, the Michigan matchup with TCU and also the Georgia matchup with Ohio State. But also, we want to ask you guys, as the news is fresh, Big Ten West has 2 new coaches and a third one coming. It seems like with the 2 new coaches that they have a dramatic improvement in the level of coaching on the West in the Big Ten, just with the bringing in of Luke Fickell to Wisconsin and the bringing in Matt Rule to Nebraska. What do you think, Craig?
Oh, no, I think those are good choices. I mean, I have to admit, as someone else said, maybe Seth, that I thought Scott Frost would work out at Nebraska eventually. And boy, I was wrong about that one. So, but it seems like Rule is a good coach. It seems like he could work out fine at Nebraska. Fickell has proven at Cincinnati he can create a program and make it go. I think there'll be major changes at Wisconsin. They brought the UNC OC in, and so that program's going to look very different. My friend in Madison, Badger Ken, says fans are very excited about the change, even if they're somewhat melancholy and sad about losing Leonard. I think that reflects Alvarez's perhaps tightness to Jim Leonard. Where Leonard will go, I have no idea. He's not staying at Wisconsin, obviously, and he's maybe he'll end up at Purdue. I don't know. There's been some speculation about that.
Seth?
I mean, I thought the best coach in the Big Ten West, I thought was Brom. So
Me too.
They just lost the top, even though they're bringing in some new guys. I think Rule can be successful because he actually knows how to recruit Texas, which was the trick when Nebraska was good. When Nebraska would do, it'd be like, okay, we're going to go and get players out of Texas that don't necessarily want to go to Texas or can't get into Texas. And then they just had an amazing high school system all around the Midwest that no one else had access to. Basically the same way that Wisconsin has been able to keep their thing going. But Nebraska's has dried up. There's not a whole lot of talent that comes out of there. They used to be like walk on you. And I thought Scott Frost would know what the secret sauce is for Nebraska, because the one thing they have, and the one thing that's going to keep Nebraska on top, or at least they're not going to slip down to be a 3-9 program every year, is their fan base. That fan base isn't going away. And when you have that kind of group of people, you can just fill that stadium every year and every game, and that's what draws people there. Lincoln, Nebraska doesn't draw anybody there. Bill McCartney used to say that the way he would recruit Nebraska is when he was at Colorado. The way I'd recruit against Nebraska is I'd let them go visit there first, and then I'd bring them to Colorado and say, so where do you want to live? But they have a great fan base, and Rule's a good coach, and I think he could have success there. I don't think I think we maybe overstated all year how bad the Big Ten West was. The Big Ten West was kind of mediocre, not Rutgers level. Okay, it's Illinois was a good team this year, and we were all kind of wondering, okay, is that just an effect of playing bad quarterbacks out there? They did have a lot of bad quarterbacks in the Big Ten West, but Illinois is legit, right? And I thought Purdue, Aiden O'Connell played out of his mind. They're a pretty decent 8-4 team. Minnesota was a pretty decent version of themselves. So what do you got to fix? You got to fix Nebraska. They're going way under their normal level. And Wisconsin recently fell down. You get those 2 programs back up again, I think the Big Ten West is back to being basically what the Big Ten West was.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. What about Sanders going to? Colorado? Yeah. I mean, does that feel like a good fit? Does that feel like it's plausible?
I mean, he already got a commit from a top 10 kid in the 2024 class. I mean,
Is that right?
If you're Colorado, there's no reason not to swing for the fences. And there one period of history where they were actually pretty good. They were getting a ton of guys out of LA, and I don't really know if there is any way to get guys out of LA that isn't Deion Sanders. I mean, Colorado as a school has a lot to offer. It's in a beautiful area. And
Live radio, love it.
Hey, Craig,
Yeah,
it's your
sorry.
mom. And she says,
answer your phone, Craig.
Mom, I'm on the internet. Call back later.
But yeah, I mean, it certainly makes Colorado interesting, and that's not something they've been for a long time.
All right, we have about 9-10 minutes left here. I wanted to get your thoughts on Michigan basketball as we're heading into Big Ten play tonight against Minnesota, and also Michigan hockey with the way the recruiting's going. Craig, I'm sure you have a ton of thoughts on Michigan basketball, but the big news is that they announced that Jalen Wellen is out for the year with the ACL injury, and the backcourt just got that much thinner.
Yeah, it's difficult to put it politely right now. They came into the season with 3 real guards because Frankie left, and so they end up with 3 guards, and probably in and of itself that that was hard to see how it was going to work out. And now they've got 2 guards. It isn't clear whether Kobe can actually play the point. I asked him that actually a year ago at media day, and he said, yeah, he was recruited as both a 1 and a 2, and he thought he could play the point. So we'll see. Probably there's going to be some necessity of that. I don't know who on this roster can actually slide down and play a 2.
Isaiah Barnes.
Yeah, maybe, but that's probably the only choice. I'm not convinced that's really going to work very well, and whether he can play defense at the 2.
Yeah, he can.
Or you think he can?
He can play defense at the 2 better than anyone on the roster, probably. Like what we've seen from him in very brief stretches is that he has the athletic ability to defend 2s. And he came in and there were like some talk about his work ethic and his ability to process information or just remember what he was supposed to be doing on the court. But physically, athletically, he's got to be someone takes a extended look at. So I think you got to move Kobe to the point because Doug McDaniel is virtually unplayable right now. And you're going to look at a lot more Joey Baker and a lot more Isaiah Barnes.
I don't think that's what it'll look like tonight. My guess is tonight you'll see Doug at the point and getting the majority of minutes at the point, and Kobe at the 2. But obviously, you're going to see Kobe some. Michigan has to probably play him at the point some. Now, if you're right, Brian, and you might be, that Isaiah can play over at the 2, then maybe this isn't so bad. It's certainly the fact that Jalen hasn't shot the ball particularly well. In fact, our backcourt has been a disaster at shooting the 3. If you look at Michigan's numbers, we're about average shooting the 3, but I think the 3 primary backcourt guys are right around 20%. It's only because Jet has shot it well and other guys have shot it okay, but they're getting nothing out of the backcourt in terms of shooting the 3. So maybe this will work out, but it doesn't seem like it's something that the staff has experimented with at all to this point in time. And so I don't know. I hope you're right. If you are, great. They'll move on. The whole question is, how good of a team is this going to be in the event? Right now on the KenPom data, and that KenPom data is getting to the point where it isn't frivolous, has Michigan at, I think, number 11 in the Big Ten of the 14 teams. And now they're not that far away from number 7, 8, 9, and 10, but for sure the numbers don't look great so far. I mean, we don't turn the ball over. I think we're number 2 in the country in turnover rate, which is phenomenal, but other things aren't so good, particularly defensive rebounding, not so good. And overall defense, I think they're number 89 on the KenPom stats, which of course isn't good either. So
yeah, I mean, if you could turn Barnes into a 3-and-D guy, this is. I mean, we're talking about survival now because
yeah, I agree.
the real problem was they needed another guard. They went and got another guard, and then they
They
lost.
needed Terrence Shannon. Is
Yeah.
what they
Yeah,
needed.
that's a
And then-
really good point. I
And then
mean,
Michigan's asinine transfer policy prevented them
Agreed.
from getting Terrence Shannon. So like,
especially in Terrence Shannon's case, what my understanding was 2 courses short of graduating,
He
and
had this whole thing where he was going to like finish up his courses over the summer and then come to Michigan, and then Illinois just like, look, we can give you, you can just get in. Do you want to like skip that part? And he's like, sure, because he was, I think he was like, had to take at least a couple summer courses. But the reality is the reality now, right? Like, it sucks that they didn't get Terrence Shannon. It sucks that Frankie left when there was absolutely a role for him, even with Jalen Llewellyn on this team.
I mean, that was just inexplicable to me because it's like we got 3 guards on the roster, and we're bringing an Ivy League guy, and it's like you think Jalen Llewellyn is going to displace you? I mean, I guess that guy.
or you think Doug is going to displace you?
Yeah, I was just like, what? I don't get it. Like that's a very like old man yells at cloud at me. But I was really hyped up about Frankie, and losing him is, I think, a major reason that this program is currently scuffling because we had a 4-year point guard in Derek Walton. We had a 4-year point guard in Xavier Simpson, and those went really well. And now we just have this parade of this guy's here for 1 year, this guy's here for 1 year, this guy's here for 1 year, and you see it every season where Michigan enters the season and they look like garbage because their point guard is acclimating to the team, and it just feels like they're going to be stuck on this cycle because they're going to have a new point guard next year. I mean, maybe it'll be Doug. I don't know, but they're going to have to bring in somebody, and it just feels like, the treadmill that Michigan is on with these transfer point guards is something that I would really like to see stop.
All right, in the last couple of minutes here, Brian, let's do something that'll put a bigger smile on your face. It seems like Michigan is killing it in recruiting in hockey right now. How many 5-stars did I just see get picked up?
Well, there's 3 2006s that they've picked up that are 5-stars to puck preps. Most recent is Christian Epperson, who's on the U17 team and was at Shattuck where he put up 100 points last year. They have Aiden Park, who's basically the same guy. These guys are all forwards. They're all super hyped, and for Naurato to be able to come through and pull these guys in after recruiting collapsed under Mel Pearson, because the word got out in hockey circles that Mel Pearson was Mel Pearson. And like for Naurato to be able to bounce back like this, even with an interim tag on him and get these guys in, I don't think he's going to have an interim tag on him very, very long.
Yeah, it is time. It is, or it's close to time, isn't it, for him to be named non-interim or however.
Well, I think if they're recruiting like this, I guess the urgency to do it is not high. But yeah, I mean, they had a kind of a rough weekend against Wisconsin, but other than that, they've been playing very well. Aside for that Minnesota series, but half the team was out, including the best player in college hockey. So, I feel like in general they've been playing approximately to expectations. They're a very young team. They are going to make a bunch of mistakes, and so it feels more like 2 years ago when all those top 5 picks were freshmen, and not 1 year ago when they were sophomores and they were the number 1 overall seed. And that's about what you'd expect. And they're playing very well on the power play. They're organized when they try to get in the zone. They're a little bit overwhelmed physically by some teams, but they got crushed by Penn State and they bounce back and they win that game the next day. So, I feel like they're at a point where, it's about time.
All right, guys, appreciate your time. As always, we're going to end it there on the bright note. Michigan hockey recruiting is killing it. And, of course, next week when you guys come back, we'll be talking more about the matchup with TCU in the playoff. We'll be kind of recapping the first half of the Michigan hockey season, and we'll set the stage for more Michigan basketball as well. Thanks to Craig, Seth, and Brian for joining me here in the show. Thanks to Miz for joining me here, as it was Sam's day off. He's doing some family things. It'll be everybody's day off tomorrow. No Michigan Insider tomorrow. We will be back on the air on Monday So stay tuned for that here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.